That's communication for.
Oh, no.
Wow, I haven't heard about communication for.
All right, now try it, Dustin.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Taking my hat off, my gloves off.
You are indeed.
I didn't know the motion.
Yeah, the river was pretty much open where we are. So we were just swimming across some crazy water.
Good for you, good day.
Hey, Tom, do you mind switching off your?
I'm trying, I won't do it.
Testing.
My button.
The host privileges, right? Could you make me a co-host? I'd prefer to do it after.
So do the motion in a second and then discussion prior to.
Or, because mine's not necessary. My point is discussion. We should obviously have this discussion. But my point is more of a justification. So I'd prefer to do that after. I don't see it, no.
Justin, can you move that table, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, I've got 6 o'clock in spite of what that clock says. So we'll start the February 21st work session of the Scotia Board of Trustees. We'll skip the attendance because everybody's here, George by Zoom and everybody else in person. The first item of business is the override of the potential override of the tax cap. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to override the tax cap for the 2022 budget season if we should still have to.
And I'll second.
Clerk call the roll.
Trustee Cook,
Yes.
trustee Rizzo,
No.
Mayor Gifford,
Yes.
trustee Gray,
No,
trustee Solichak,
Yes, it's an important part of trying to keep the village together as it is currently. So I say yes again.
Thank you. Justin?
Yeah. So thank you, Mayor, for giving me the opportunity to speak. One of the reasons why I stand up today and second is something that I don't take lightly. Being President's Day, I actually took the time to revisit history and look at some of the writings of George Washington and the interactions between George Washington and Alexander Hamilton in the creation of essentially our economy. And there was a lot of tension at that time over levying of taxes. The discussions over taxation is as old as our country. But at the end of the day, George Washington, throughout his life, really talked about the importance of the republic. And we oftentimes think of the republic as our form of government, but when you look back to the founding fathers' inspiration from the Latin term res publica, it means the public and the public good. And back in 1904, when the village was created with the idea of providing services that would lead to the development of our village. It would allow us to have the businesses and the homes, which now account to 3,500 homes and businesses in the village of Scotia. They built 52 miles of roadway that weave in and out of our village, our 1 square mile village. We have a public sewer line and a water system, which protects our environment from, in terms of being close proximities with everyone having septic tanks. It wasn't feasible in terms of its urban design. The village of Scotia was actually created also to provide essential public safety services. First starting with our fire department, after a series of arsons nearly burned down the early village. And then 100 years ago, they started the village police department. Today, we're faced with a challenge that is created by a tax cap set forth by the state that systemically disadvantages villages like ours. The very complex formula, which is available for everyone to look at on the state comptroller's office, takes into place a growth factor. When you're a town like Malta or Glenville that has old farmland that can be developed, or a city that may have substantial blight that can be redeveloped, the likelihood of you actually getting to a 2% tax cap is far greater than when you're a village where we're now perpetually at a 1.02% tax increase year over year. Even in a time of not historic inflation, cost of living increases in the private sector range between 2 and 3%. This year, even our Social Security cost of living increases is set higher than 1.02%. So when to not be able to give the village the opportunity to explore the budget, to see where the numbers are going to fall, would severely jeopardize the service delivery that we do provide to village residents. We cannot tear up our roads. We cannot rip up our sewer lines. We cannot rip up our water mains. During a time of a pandemic, we certainly need our first responders now more than ever. And in an era of 2022 with police reform, communities are actually starting to come together to discuss things that we in the village have always known. That close proximity policing, community policing is the best way to go forward. And our village police department has stuck by that commitment throughout their entire existence. So I second the motion to override the tax cap, not out of a sense that the village of Scotia has a blank check just to cover any overages, but just to be able to explore a realistic budget that preserves the services that the village residents continually ask for and support. It's a dichotomy, and it's something that we as a village must get real about. And that is, what are we willing to pay for the services that we receive? But also, how can we continue to explore non-taxable revenues to be able to offset our budget? It also needs to be prepared to discuss with and lobby with other villages. Mind you, in 2019, 26% of other municipalities throughout the state voted to override the tax cap. That's just municipalities, that does not include school districts. So we need to also talk with New York State about stopping some unfunded mandates that continually also cause us to go above and beyond the property tax cap, but also to have them reevaluate and rethink the sales tax distribution at the county level, but also state aid and federal aid. So that with that, I appreciate the opportunity to express my vote, and I encourage any village resident, regardless of where you fall, whether you want to support the services or whether you are opposed to increasing this tax cap, to please reach out to any one of us up here. We're always willing to talk, but also to be engaged and involved throughout this budget process so that you can see with full transparency where your money is actually going. The budget presentations are public. Each department head will come and present their budget, talk about what's in it, what's new, what's existing, and also what's increasing. So when I appreciate everyone being here today, and I appreciate to see everyone coming back at the budget presentations. And with that, I yield back my.
Yeah, I'd just like to say one thing too. It's important to know that the whole going over the tax cap is not a negative blight. It's not an act of being irresponsible. It's very much a fact that we're certainly acknowledging the facts that are in place. We are making sure that we continue to support the services that we have in the village and continue them to be available for every resident that's out there. And that's the responsible thing to do. It's a hard decision for sure. As Trustee Cook said, it's not something that we take lightly. It's not something that we do flippantly. We wouldn't do that with our own money, and we won't do it with the village's money. It's something that we feel is necessary to be able to have the mobility to be able to make a decision if we need to. It's certainly not our first choice, but it's a responsible decision to say yes to this as we move forward with supporting the village and its services that we provide. So thank you.
I can't either. Okay. Thank you, George.
So Tom, can this video be placed on YouTube within the next 24 hours?
Sure. I don't know if you can hear it, but we'll try. Sure.
You'll be able to hear George on the Zoom recording because he was using his microphone.
Okay. All right. Item 2 on the agenda is the Sanders Avenue.
I'd like to say something about this budget. I mean, I've been on the board for a long time, and we all have to live within our means, and that includes us. And if it takes us a while to go through the budget process to figure out where the savings can be taken from our budget, that we should do so. I've been asking this board to look at the budget for months, going through each department head and seeing where we could find savings. I do not believe I would vote on any layoffs in the village. That to me is not the way to go. But there are ways we can look to see if we can get savings. Where there's ways we can look. And I believe this board hasn't even attempted to do that. And now we're all going to pay for this.
So Joe, I just want to point out something. You've been on the board longer than any of us here.
Mhm.
So you know that the early beginnings of the property tax cap legislation, the property tax cap levies and increases were actually deferred by fund balance use. There is no way, and I say no way, that we can stay below a 1.02% tax cut or tax levy without massive layoffs through every department. And last year, the lines that you actually proposed to eliminate were all contractual lines that legally cannot be eliminated. So with due respect, the department heads have actually been doing the work of trying to find savings for the last 3 weeks. And they will have their opportunity to present it to the board at the public meeting and the schedule that was published last meeting. So do I agree that the process needs to be done earlier? Absolutely. But with your no vote on this tax cap legislation, I look forward to seeing a real open and honest conversation about what you plan to cut.
I will look at the
So-
budget
so
line by
guys,
line with the
guys.
department heads.
This is inappropriate.
Well-
Justin, you've had your,
Right. I presume that we can
So-
look at each department head's budget and do what we have to do. You have to, it's tough. It's gonna be very, very tough. And I'm not saying we're gonna do the job that we're supposed to be doing, because it's gonna be tough for all of us to look at this thing.
so, no, come on. So you've said this every year. We have.
Well, I've been in every year, but I don't see any
Uh,
figures before we do this
so-
thing. We don't know where we are. and
Right,
where we're
that's
going.
why we have to override it.
Where's
And then
the
we
figure?
don't have to go over it.
All right, whatever you want, Mayor.
Mayor,
that's
Mayor
it.
Gifford, what is the
We have
penalty?
to
What is
have
the penalty of not having this vote resolution presented to the state controller's office by March 1st? What is the penalty? And we end up having to go over the tax levy. What is the penalty?
You
Following last year's
you
budget.
have
I
to,
think
you
it is.
have to put the money in an account. And you have to take out a fund balance, the same amount of money, and put that in the account too as a penalty.
Uh-huh.
We don't have that money. So in any event, this is, this discussion is pointless at this point. We've already approved the measure. Let's go on to.
Okay, I
item
want to
2.
say something though, because everyone else got a chance to talk, so I would like a couple seconds before we go to number 2. You know, this is a very challenging issue, the services for the cost. But what hasn't been spoken about, like, I don't appreciate, okay, there's going to be layoffs. I don't come to that same conclusion. We have a lot of money that's sitting, which is the ARPA funds, right?
875,000.
800, we have
No.
371,000, I
We
believe.
only have half of it.
No, in the spring, we're gonna get the remainder. So that has not been discussed. We haven't brainstormed about those monies. So I respect everyone's vote here. However, I respect mine as well. Because we haven't had that discussion. And I've been the fire liaison, I've been the police liaison, I've gone to both of those departments. I know the challenges of both of those departments. And let me tell you, I'm going right on the record tonight. Ryan, you're running the parks are staying. If I'm on this board, the parks are staying. There's not going to be any consolidation of the parks. There's not going to be any consolidation of the police department, and the firehouse is going to be built. So everybody wants the firehouse.
Thank you. Heather.
That's a separate issue. Okay, that's a separate vote. But we just consolidated the parks with the DPW. And that's going to be, that was a savings right there. I don't appreciate people saying, oh, there's going to just be layoffs. It's very general terms. Let's look at that $800,000 estimate that is going to be in our account that I don't know if any of you folks know.
Thank you. Heather. All right, so let's go on to item 2. I've had another letter from the woman on Sanders Avenue asking if we can please move ahead with the sale of the property behind her house. Are we ever going to get this to move, or should I tell her just not to bother? This has nothing, the piece that Singh wanted, I don't believe the village actually owns, and that's not on the table. It's been assessed to the village for a long time, but I researched it a couple weeks ago, and we don't have any deed for it. We don't have any title for it. So this has nothing to do with Singh. It has everything to do with getting rid of property we don't want and other people can use and improve. So is there any sentiment on the board for going ahead with those pieces?
Tom, what's the total amount?
Sorry,
The total amount?
total money?
Yeah.
I don't have the appraisals in front of me, but they're about $3,000 a piece.
Okay, and those are the ones that we viewed, right?
That what?
Those are the ones that we went to view.
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
yeah.
I still have questions as to whether or not those parcels can even be developed or even be, used for anything. We seem, and none of those questions have been answered. I've asked, there seems to be,
But does that matter?
yes, it does, because what we're essentially doing is the appraisal that is given to someone is based on the value of the property with intended use. And if it turns out someone buys the property and then the DEC or the state says you can't have anything there, then we've essentially just sold property to a village resident at an assessed value and then are turning around and telling them they can't do anything with that piece of property.
I agree with you.
It is that whole backwater area is New York State protected wetlands.
But
So
we can tell them that. I mean, they know that, and everybody along there
DEC is
knows
gonna have
that.
a field day.
Why?
well, there's already
Why do
illegal.
we want it? Why would we not let them have it?
There is already illegal construction that was done and built on that area that has not been addressed. That has not been checked with New York State as to whether or not that is actually, at least that has been reported back to the board, whether New York State allows that development there. I also have sincere questions about erosion. That is a high impact flood area. And with Riverside and Sanders so close to the river that, if people were to go and start taking away the trees and the root systems on that riverbank without putting concrete barriers, we're looking at potentially ruining the integrity of Riverside and Sanders Road. So I don't feel
So
comfortable.
what about selling it with the proviso that they not cut the trees?
Once you sell it, you can do
I
what you
mean-
want.
I mean, I think we're setting up a resident, we're selling them property at an assessed value that's higher than what they're actually going to be able to use it for.
Okay,
So if I can say one thing about
Interest?
that, there,
and purchasing those lots.
what's that?
Has anyone expressed interest?
Yeah, the 3 of the 5 people along that strip with the 5 lots on Riverside, where some of the houses are on Sanders and some of them are on. So 3 of the 5 expressed interest. The other, the one that's next door to the one we looked at, and he tells me that he's corrected the problems with it. That one, and there's one down in, I think, near Susan's house. I don't remember what number it was. But we don't have to sell all of them. The ones that are particularly interested are those 5, the opposite those 5 houses that we looked at.
So George has a statement, but Mayor Gifford, I'm going to ask that you turn on your speaker so that George's voice comes through the TV, not through my computer speakers. George, can you go ahead and say something?
yeah, can you hear me? Hello?
Ready when you are.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Thank you for the thumbs up. I am watching. I applaud the mayor for keeping this on the docket and up for discussion, because it is important to keep every opportunity for revenue to come into the village on the table. And that's one of the more important parts about our responsibility as fiduciary, having fiduciary responsibility to the village, is to keep every source of revenue on the table. So I applaud the mayor for keeping that in our discussion points. I will agree with Trustee Cook on a couple of points that we don't have the full discussion completed on this yet. There still are some outlying issues that need to be answered as far as responsibilities and areas and things of that nature, because being fiduciary responsibility has to make sure that all of our sales will stay final and not be contested. So when we say to someone who's obviously a grown-up and making a grown-up decision about buying a piece of property, they will know all of the things that they are responsible for and all the things that the property is failed to do. It is our responsibility as property owners to disclose that stuff upon sale. So it is our due diligence to finish that discussion, to finish the discovery effort, and to move forward with it. And again, every source of revenue that can be seen to come back into the village is important to keep discussions on it.
Go ahead and turn yours off. There we go.
So back to my original question. Do we how are we gonna let's just have an informal show of hands. Are we gonna, should I pursue this? Should I tell the people to forget it? Justin?
I personally think before we do that, we at least need to have Lewis come in and explain to the board what can and cannot be done there. Because again, I don't want to go ahead and sell a piece of property to a village resident at its current assessment, which is based upon what someone can do there. And then end up having the value of that property decrease because the village then says, you can't build a dock, you can't build stairs, you can't have.
So then if we go to these people and say, is that, they're gonna be all right?
Well, I mean, that's when I turn to Lydia and ask, is that legally possible to be able to do? Can you put that many stipulations on a sale in a deed?
Well,
And without having
it's
to be able
apples and oranges. I mean, the land, I would think is assessed as vacant property right now. We've made no, I don't think anyone has said you can build on it.
You said they can't build anything, but
If the determination from Lewis is they can't, they enter the contract with that understanding. If they then, deed restrictions aren't really the way to go, because then it's up to us.
Right.
To enforce it or the neighbors, but if they do start to build, then under our code, we'd have to enforce our laws that in fact you can't build anything on it. So I think if you sell it, we get it, having an understanding or determination that it's not buildable should be made before they enter into an agreement.
this is
But
part
then-
of the contract then.
Yeah, and then going forward, if they try to build, we'd have to enforce our laws.
I don't think it's between Lewis and us at this juncture. I think it's at the potential buyers and Lewis in terms of what restrictions that he's aware that may exist. Because I don't know what any of the residents want the property for. You know, maybe they want to keep the property as is. I do have a concern with the erosion though, like you stated.
Yeah, that's
You
why
know?
I suppose if we had a determination whether or not it's buildable, it may not be if it's wetlands, or certainly probably under our codes of very little, couldn't build a
You certainly couldn't build a building.
Yeah, whether or not you can put stairs or dock or something else, that's a different issue.
So I'm gonna. I'd like to
Hold on,
answer-
George, we
Hold on.
gotta switch over so you're on the TV.
No, okay. If you guys can hear me, can I get a thumbs up? Thank you. I'm gonna answer the question that was asked. Are we willing to have the mayor pursue this to move forward with trying to sell it? And I say yes. There's a lot of things that need to be discussed before it's gonna happen, but are we willing to let him move forward? Are we willing to let it alone? And I am wholeheartedly saying, again, every source of revenue. Let's look at all look at it all the way to the end so we can say no more. So that was the question was asked, and I respectfully request everyone else to answer that question. Thank you. And I can't hear anybody, so maybe that's better.
Okay,
That's standard contact language though,
Right.
so.
all right, so I will try to get, Justin, is that?
I just want due diligence and I want the
Okay.
village just be fully transparent with whoever
Right.
the buyer is going to be.
I don't
Right.
think there's any problem with that.
Okay, that's no problem.
You will get no argument from this side either, so please move forward.
Anybody else? Motion to adjourn?
So be it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you, everybody.